Hana spread her wings wide as she caught the morning wind above the crystal towers of Ethros Prime. The rainbow light from the twin suns made her silver wings sparkle like jewels. She was 12 years old and the best young flyer in her entire district. The other Veltari children could barely keep up when she danced through the sky. Her wings felt warm and strong as they carried her higher. The wind sang to her, and she sang back with little chirps of joy. This was what it meant to be Veltari. To fly was to be alive. To soar through the endless blue was to touch the very soul of their world. "Hana, come down for lessons," her mother Suri called from their floating garden platform. Her voice carried easily on the wind currents that flowed between the crystal spires. "Just 5 more minutes, Mother," Hana called back, spinning in a tight spiral that made her laugh. "The wind is so perfect today." Her father Minho flew up to meet her, his larger wings casting cool shadows as he glided beside her. "Your mother is right, little star. Education is important too." But even as he spoke, Minho smiled at his daughter's skill. Hana moved through the air like she was born for it, which of course she was. All Veltari were born to fly, but few had such natural talent. Her wings responded to every shift in her emotions, every tiny change in the wind. When she was happy, they glowed brighter. When she focused, they became perfectly still and efficient. The Veltari had always believed that flying came from the heart. Only those with pure emotions and balanced souls could truly master the skies. Those who were angry or sad would find their wings heavy and slow. Those who were afraid would lose control and fall. It was the way of their people, passed down for thousands of generations. Hana had never known fear while flying. The sky was her friend, the wind her companion. She could feel every air current for miles around, sense every shift in the weather before it happened. Her teachers said she might become a sky singer one day, one of the rare Veltari who could call the winds themselves. That morning, like every morning, the 3 of them flew together to the learning center. Other families joined them in the air, creating streams of colorful wings flowing between the towers. It was a beautiful sight that filled Hana with warmth and pride. This was her world, her people, her perfect life among the clouds. She had no way of knowing it would be her last morning of true flight. The attack came without warning just after midday. The Khazrak swarm appeared in the sky like a dark cloud. But this cloud was made of metal and hunger. The mechanical creatures were the size of small ships, with razor wings that cut through the air like knives. They had come from the void between stars, drawn by the energy signatures of flying beings. The Veltari had heard stories of the Khazrak, but they had never attacked this far into peaceful space. Now they filled the sky above Ethros Prime, turning the beautiful blue into a nightmare of metal and violence. "All flyers to the ground!" The emergency signals rang out from every crystal tower. "Seek shelter immediately!" But the Khazrak hunted anything that flew. Running away in the air only made the Veltari easier targets. The mechanical swarm moved faster than any living creature, their energy weapons reaching out like deadly fingers to strike down anyone who took to the sky. Hana found herself trapped on a learning platform with her class when the first wave of attacks began. Below them, the safe shelters were too far to reach on foot. Above them, the Khazrak circled like vultures made of steel and hate. "We have to get the children to safety," said Teacher Bora, but her voice shook with fear. Her own wings had started to fade as terror filled her heart. Without emotional control, no Veltari could fly properly. That was when Hana saw her parents rising from a platform across the wide gap. Minho and Suri had their wings spread wide, flying straight toward the Khazrak swarm that blocked the path. To the children. "Mother, father, no!" Hana screamed, but they could not hear her over the sound of energy weapons and mechanical roars. She watched as her parents flew directly into the swarm. They moved together like a dance, drawing the attention. of dozens of Kazrak away from the children's platform. Minho's strong wings carried him in sharp turns and sudden drops, while Suri used her smaller size to dart between the mechanical hunters. For a moment, it looked like they might escape. The Kazrak were fast, but not as agile as skilled Veltari, flyers. Hana felt hope bloom in her chest as she watched her parents lead the swarm away. Then the energy beams found their mark. Minho fell first, his wings torn by invisible fire. Suri dove toward him, trying to catch him, trying to save him. The Kazrak swarmed over them both, and they disappeared into the dark cloud of metal and death. Hana felt something break inside her chest, the warmth that had always lived in her. Heart went cold and empty. The joy that had made her wings so bright flickered and died like a candle in the wind. Her wings began to fade. It started as a loss of color, the silver becoming dull and gray. Then the strength went out of them, the muscles becoming weak and unresponsive. The wind that had always sung to her now felt distant and cold. By the time the human rescue ships arrived hours later, Hana's wings were barely more than transparent, skin stretched over fragile bones. She could not lift herself even an inch from the ground. The emotional trauma had severed her connection to flight completely. The humans were efficient and kind. Their ships drove away the Kazrak swarm with weapons that could reach across vast distances. They set up medical stations and evacuation centers. They saved thousands of Veltari lives. But they could not save what mattered most to Hana. They could not bring back her parents. They could not repair her broken heart. They could not restore her wings. Dr. Kim Jisoo, a human doctor who specialized in alien psychology, examined Hana in the emergency medical center. The physical damage is minimal, she told the other doctors, but the emotional trauma has disrupted her bioelectric flight systems. Without therapy, she may never fly again. Hana heard the words, but they meant nothing to her. The sky was gone. Her parents were gone. Her wings were gone. She was no longer truly Veltari. She was just a broken girl who used to touch the clouds. In the days that followed, rescue ships carried the survivors to safe worlds far from the Kazrak threat. Most Veltari were placed in communities where they could rebuild their lives and eventually return to the sky. But those like Hana, whose trauma was too deep, were sent to special facilities for healing. The ship that carried Hana away from Ethros Prime had wide windows that showed the stars. She pressed her face to the glass and watched her home world shrink to a tiny point of light. Somewhere down there, her parents lay cold in the crystal ruins. She closed her eyes and tried not to think about flying. It hurt too much to remember what it felt like to have the wind carry her higher than the tallest towers. It hurt too much to remember the feeling of perfect freedom that came with spreading her wings wide. The sky was lost to her forever. She was sure of that. But deep in space, traveling on ships built by humans who had never known natural flight, Hana could not imagine that some people refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. She could not know that on a world called Terra Nova, a young human boy was building his 15th failed flying machine, dreaming of touching the stars. 5 years had passed since the day Hana lost her wings. She sat at her desk in the Harmony Center for Refugee Youth, translating medical reports from Galactic Standard into various alien languages. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, but her mind was elsewhere, watching the clouds drift past the window. At 17, Hana had grown tall and graceful, but her wings remained withered and useless. They hung from her shoulders like dead leaves, barely visible beneath the loose shirt she wore to hide them. The other staff members at the center were kind enough never to mention them. The Harmony Center was built on Terra Nova, a human colony world with perfect blue skies and gentle winds. It was supposed to help young aliens recover from trauma and find new purposes in life. For most species it worked well, but for Veltari like Hana, being surrounded by open sky was both a blessing and a curse. Hana, we have 3 new arrivals. From the Kepler incident, said Director Chen, placing files on her desk. 2 Zephyrians who lost their gas bladders, and 1 Veltari child whose wings were damaged by radiation. Can you handle the intake interviews? Hana nodded and took the files. She had become the center's expert on flight-capable species who had lost their abilities. It was painful work, but she understood their suffering better than anyone else could. The morning interviews went smoothly. The Zephyrians were sad, but hopeful. Their gas bladders could potentially be repaired with surgery. The young Veltari. Girl Nari was only 8 years old and still believed she might fly again someday. Hana did not have the heart to tell her otherwise. Will I really be able to go home when I'm better? Nari asked, her small wings flickering with faint hope. The doctors will do everything they can, Hana said gently. It was not a lie, but it was not the whole truth either. Some things, once broken, could not be fixed. Just as Hana finished the last interview, a tremendous crash shook the building. Alarms went off, and through the window she could see smoke rising from the courtyard. Emergency teams rushed outside while Hana gathered the frightened refugee children. Stay here, she told them. I will check what happened. In the courtyard, Hana found chaos. A strange flying machine had crashed into the fountain, sending water everywhere. The machine looked like a cross between a bird and a glider, with mechanical wings that were now bent and smoking. Pieces of metal and fabric were scattered across the garden. From the wreckage crawled a human boy, maybe 15 years old, with black hair and clothes covered in oil stains. He seemed completely unhurt and strangely excited about the crash. Instead of looking embarrassed, he was already pulling out a notebook and sketching the broken machine. Fascinating, he said to himself. The wing joints failed at exactly the stress point I calculated. The weight distribution was off by at least 12%. He looked up and noticed Hana watching him. Oh, hello. Did anyone get hurt when I crashed? I tried to aim for the empty courtyard, but the wind caught me wrong. No one was hurt, Hana said carefully, but you destroyed our fountain. I'm really sorry about that. I'll pay for repairs. The boy stood up and brushed dirt off his clothes. I'm Taiho, by the way. I live in the engineering district. I was testing a new wing design based on Veltari flight patterns. Hana stared at him. Veltari flight patterns? Yes. Taiho's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. I've been studying how different species achieve natural flight. Veltari have the most efficient wing design I've ever seen. The way your wings can change, shape and stiffness based on emotional state is incredible. It's like having built-in adaptive technology. Something cold settled in Hana's stomach. You study our flight? Oh yes, for years now. I've been trying to figure out how to replicate it mechanically. Humans are pretty much the only intelligent species that never evolved natural flight, so we have to build everything from scratch. He pulled out his notebook and showed her pages covered with wing diagrams. See, I've been working on flexible wing membranes that respond to electrical impulses, kind of like how your emotional states affect your wing structure. Hana felt anger rising in her chest. This human boy was treating Veltari flight like a puzzle to solve, a problem to crack. With his machines, he had no idea what it meant to lose something so precious. You cannot replicate Veltari flight, she said coldly. It comes from the soul, from emotional harmony. It is not just mechanical. Taiho looked confused by her anger. Well, sure, the biological triggers are emotional, but the actual physics of lift and thrust are still just physics. The wings still have to push against air molecules and create pressure differentials. The emotional part is just the control system. You understand nothing. Hana turned to walk away. Wait, Taiho called after her. Are you Veltari? I've never actually talked to one before. Could you help me understand where my calculations went wrong? Hana stopped and turned back to face him. I cannot help you because I cannot fly. She expected him to look embarrassed or sorry for bringing up a painful subject. Instead, Taiho looked curious. Cannot fly? Did you have an injury? Wing damage? Nerve disruption? I lost my flight in trauma, Hana said, her voice sharp. My wings are dead. My connection to the sky is severed forever. I am broken. Taiho was quiet for a moment, studying her face. Then he said the most unexpected thing. So? Neither can I, but that doesn't stop me from trying. Hana blinked in surprise. What? I can't fly either. No human can naturally. We're too heavy, wrong bone structure, no wings, completely unsuited for it. But that just means we have to find other ways. He gestured at his crashed machine. This is my 15th failed attempt this year. Each failure teaches me something new. But you were born without flight. I had it and lost it. That is different. Is it, though? Taiho picked up a piece of his broken wing mechanism. I mean, the end result is the same. We're both ground-bound people who want to touch the sky. The only difference is that you know what it feels like and I don't. Hana had never thought about it that way before. Among the Veltari, losing your flight meant losing your identity. But humans had never had that identity to begin with. Your people accept being unable to fly? She asked. Accept it? No way. We've been trying to fly since before we had written language. We tried everything. Balloons, gliders, rockets, anti-gravity drives, you name it. Every time something didn't work, we just tried something different. Director Chen approached, them with a maintenance crew. Taiho, what did I tell you about testing your inventions near the center? Sorry, Director. The wind calculations were off. Taiho turned to Hana. Would you like to see my workshop sometime? I have prototypes of flying machines based on 17 different species. Maybe you could tell me what I'm getting wrong about Veltari aerodynamics. Hana hesitated. Talking about flight hurt, but something about this strange human boy intrigued her. He looked at her useless wings not with pity, but with scientific curiosity. He treated her lost flight not as a tragedy, but as a technical challenge. I don't know if I can help you, she said finally. That's okay. Even if you can't help me fly, maybe I can help you understand why I keep trying. Taiho grinned and started gathering pieces of his crashed machine. Besides, I need someone to tell me when my ideas are completely crazy. Your ideas are completely crazy, Hana said without thinking. Perfect. You're already helping. Despite herself, Hana felt the smallest smile touch her lips. It was the first time she had smiled when talking about flight in 5 years. As the maintenance crew cleaned up the courtyard, Hana watched Taiho carefully pack the pieces of his broken flying machine. He treated each failed component like it was valuable, like it contained important information for his next attempt. Maybe, she thought, there was something to learn from someone who had never stopped trying to reach the sky, even though he was. Never meant to fly at all. Your workshop, she said quietly. When could I see it? Taiho looked up from his wreckage, eyes bright with excitement. How about tomorrow? I just got a new shipment of memory metal for wing joints. I think you'll find it interesting. For the first time in years, Hana was curious about flight again. Not her own lost flight, but the strange human determination to achieve something that nature had never intended. Taiho's workshop was nothing like what Hana had expected. The large room in the engineering district looked like a tornado had hit it. Flying machines in various stages of completion hung from the ceiling. Workbenches covered every wall, piled high with metal sheets, electronic components, and tools she did not recognize. Mathematical equations were written on every available surface in different colored markers. Welcome to organized chaos, Taiho said cheerfully, stepping over a pile of wing prototypes. I know it looks messy, but I know where everything is. Hana walked carefully between the scattered projects. Each flying machine was different from the last. Some had rigid wings like ancient Earth aircraft. Others had flexible membranes that reminded her painfully of Veltari wings. One strange device looked like it was designed to manipulate gravity itself. How many times have you tried to fly? She asked. This year? Maybe 200 times. Since I started? I stopped counting after 1,000. Tai-Ho picked up a helmet covered in sensors. This one measures brain activity while flying. I wanted to understand how different species control their flight mentally. And you have crashed 1,000 times? More or less. But each crash taught me something new. He showed her a thick notebook filled with sketches and notes. See, this crash showed me that flexible wings need better joint support. This one taught me about wind resistance. This one proved that my weight calculations were completely wrong. Hana stared at him. You are not afraid of crashing? Terrified, Tai-Ho said matter-of-factly. But being afraid doesn't stop me from trying. Humans are pretty good at doing things that scare us. This was completely opposite to everything Hana had learned about flight. Veltari children were taught that fear was the enemy of flying. Fear made wings heavy and unresponsive. Fear caused crashes and injuries. Only those with perfect emotional control could master the sky. My people believe that fear prevents flight, she said slowly. That's interesting. For humans, fear is just information. It tells us something might be dangerous, but danger doesn't mean impossible. Tai-Ho pulled a sheet off his latest project. This is what I'm working on now. A biomechanical interface system. The device looked like a harness covered in thin wires and sensors. Artificial wings extended from the back, made of some material that shifted color in the light. They were beautiful and alien and nothing like natural Veltari wings. It's designed to connect with existing neural pathways, Tai-Ho explained. For species that lost their natural flight abilities, the sensors read electrical signals from damaged wing muscles and translate them into mechanical movement. Hana felt her breath catch. You built this for injured flyers? I built it for anyone who wants to fly but can't. Injured aliens, humans, anyone. The system doesn't care why you can't fly naturally. It just gives you another option. Hana reached out to touch one of the artificial wings. The material felt warm and responsive, like living tissue. Have you tested it? Not yet. I need someone with the right neural pathways to interface with it properly. Someone who used to fly but lost the ability. Tai-Ho looked at her hopefully. Would you be willing to try? Fear shot through Hana like ice water. The thought of attempting to fly again, of risking another failure, made her wings ache with phantom pain. What if the system didn't work? What if she crashed? What if it proved once and for all that she was truly broken? I cannot, she said quickly. If it fails, if I fall, then you'll learn something about what doesn't work. Just like I have 1,000 times before. Tai-Ho's voice was gentle but determined. The first rule of human engineering, failing is not the opposite of succeeding. Failing is practice for succeeding. But what if I am too damaged? What if my neural pathways are too broken to interface? With your machine? Then we'll modify the machine until it works with your pathways. That's what humans do. We don't change ourselves to fit the tools. We change the tools to fit ourselves. This concept was revolutionary to Hana. Veltari, who lost their flight, were expected to accept their limitation and find new purposes on the ground. The idea that the universe should adapt to accommodate their needs, rather than the other way around, seemed almost arrogant. Your people really believe they can change anything? We have to. We're not the strongest species, or the fastest, or the smartest. We don't have natural weapons or armor or flight. If we want something nature didn't give us, we have to build it ourselves. Tai-Ho gestured at the chaos of his workshop. Every one of these machines represents a human refusing to accept a limitation. Over the following weeks, Hana found herself returning to the workshop regularly. At first, she told herself she was just curious about human engineering methods. But gradually, she realized she was drawn to Tai-Ho's approach to problem-solving. When a wing design failed, he didn't see it as evidence that flight was impossible. He saw it as data about what didn't work. When calculations were wrong, he didn't question his right to attempt flight. He questioned his math and tried again. Your people never give up, Hana observed one afternoon, watching him rebuild a control system for the 6th time. Giving up is just not trying the next idea, Taeho said, soldering a connection. There's always a next idea. But what if there isn't? What if some things are truly impossible? Taeho paused in his work and looked at her seriously. Then we'll find out by trying everything first. But I've never met an impossible thing that couldn't be solved by approaching it differently. Slowly, Hana began to understand that this was more than just stubbornness. It was a fundamentally different way of viewing the universe. Where Veltari saw natural laws and accepted them, humans saw natural laws and looked for loopholes. I want to try your biomechanical system, she said one day, surprising herself with the decision. Taeho's face lit up. Really? Are you sure? No, I am terrified. But you said fear is just information, not a barrier. Hana touched the artificial wings. And I want to know if there is still hope. There's always hope, Taeho said confidently. We just have to build it ourselves. The first test was scheduled for the next morning in an enclosed flight chamber. As Hana lay in bed that night, she felt her withered wings tingling with something she had not experienced in 5 years. It might have been fear, or it might have been the faintest echo of hope. Tomorrow she would discover whether a human boy's refusal to accept limitations could overcome the trauma that had grounded her forever. The flight chamber was a large room with padded walls and a ceiling that opened to the sky. Soft foam covered the floor, designed to cushion inevitable crashes during testing. Hana stood in the center wearing Taeho's biomechanical wing system, feeling the weight of artificial flight pressing against her shoulders. The neural sensors are reading your wing muscle activity, Taeho explained from his control station. Even though your natural wings can't generate lift anymore, the muscle memory is still there. The system will translate those impulses into mechanical wing movement. Hana flexed her withered wings slightly. The artificial wings responded with a gentle flutter. The sensation was strange, but not unpleasant. It felt like wearing a very sophisticated tool rather than growing new wings. Ready for the first test? Taeho asked. We'll start with just basic balance and control. No actual flying yet. Hana nodded and tried to calm her racing heart. She closed her eyes and remembered what it felt like to prepare for flight. The old familiar sensations came back, the way her wings would spread and catch the air, the feeling of readiness that came before takeoff. The artificial wings spread wide. Excellent, Taeho called out. Neural connection is solid. Try some gentle flapping motions. Hana began the rhythm she remembered from childhood. Up, pause, down with a slight twist. The mechanical wings followed her intentions perfectly, creating small gusts of air that stirred the dust on the chamber floor. Now try a small hop, Taeho suggested, just enough to test the lift capability. This was the moment Hana had been dreading. She bent her knees, spread the artificial wings wide, and pushed off the ground while commanding her dead wings to fly. For a brief, wonderful moment, she rose into the air. 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet off the ground. The artificial wings beat strongly, carrying her higher than she had been in 5 years. Then the memories hit her like a physical blow. Suddenly, she was 12 years old again, watching her parents disappear into the Khazrak swarm. She felt the same helpless terror, the same crushing loss. Her emotional control shattered, and the feedback sent chaotic signals through the neural interface. The artificial wings spasmed wildly. Instead of smooth, controlled flight, they beat in random, desperate patterns. Hana spun out of control and crashed hard into the foam padding. Hana! Taeho rushed to her side as she struggled to get the malfunctioning wings off her back. Are you hurt? I told you it wouldn't work, Hana said bitterly, fighting tears of frustration. I'm too broken. The trauma disrupts everything. That wasn't a failure of the system, Taeho said. helping her stand. That was the system working exactly as designed. It read your neural signals and responded to them. The problem isn't the machine or your neural pathways. Then what is the problem? You're fighting the trauma instead of flying with it. Hana stared at him. What do you mean? Taiho pulled up a chair and sat across from her. Veltari flight requires emotional harmony, right? Perfect balance and control. But what if that's not the only way to fly? It is the only way for my people. But you're not flying as a Veltari anymore. You're flying as something new. Part Veltari, part machine, part human engineering. Maybe you need a completely different approach. Over the next several days, Taiho completely redesigned his approach to training Hana. Instead of trying to recreate perfect Veltari flight, he studied human aviation principles. Human pilots didn't achieve emotional harmony with their aircraft. They learned to control machines while experiencing fear, excitement, anger, and every other emotion. The key is not to eliminate your trauma, he explained while adjusting the wing sensors. It's to use the trauma as information rather than letting it control you. I don't understand. When you crashed, your fear was trying to tell you something important. It was saying, remember what happened last time you were helpless in the air. That's useful information. It means your survival instincts are working perfectly. Taiho showed her videos of human test pilots learning to fly new aircraft. They looked terrified in many of the recordings, white-knuckled and tense. But they flew anyway, using their fear to stay alert and cautious rather than letting it ground them. Human pilots have a saying, Taiho told her. There are old pilots and bold pilots, but no old, bold pilots. Fear keeps you alive while you're learning. The next test session was completely different. Instead of trying to achieve Veltari style, emotional calm, Hana acknowledged her fear and trauma as part of the flight experience. I am afraid, she said aloud as she prepared for takeoff. Good, Taiho replied from his control station. Afraid of what specifically? Afraid of falling, afraid of being helpless, afraid of losing control. Perfect. Now use that fear. Let it make you careful instead of stopping you completely. Hana spread the artificial wings and jumped. This time, when the memories of her parents' deaths tried to overwhelm her, she didn't fight them. She acknowledged the pain and fear, then continued flying anyway. The artificial wings still shook with her emotional turbulence, but instead of wild spasming, they showed controlled tension. She was afraid, but she was flying while afraid. She stayed airborne for 30 seconds before landing deliberately on the foam padding. How did that feel? Taiho asked. Terrible and wonderful at the same time, Hana admitted. I was scared the entire time, but I was also flying. That's the human way. We're scared of almost everything we do, but we do it anyway. Over the following weeks, Hana learned to fly in ways no Veltari ever had. She flew while angry about her parents' deaths. She flew while sad about her lost home. She flew while afraid of crashing again. Each emotion created different flight characteristics, and she learned to use them all. The artificial wings became extensions of her will rather than reflections of her emotional state. When fear made her wings tense, she used that tension for rapid direction changes. When grief made her movements heavy, she used that weight for stable gliding. You're not flying like a Veltari anymore, Taiho observed during one successful flight session. No, Hana agreed, performing a spiral that would have been impossible with natural wings. I'm flying like something new. What does it feel like? Hana considered the question as she hovered 15 feet above the ground, artificial wings beating steadily despite the emotional storm in her heart. It feels like refusing to stay broken, she said finally. It feels like building something better from the pieces. The breakthrough came during what should have been a routine training session. Hana was practicing high-speed maneuvers when an emergency alarm began blaring throughout the facility. What's happening? She called to Taiho as she landed. Crash, Sight in the mountains, he replied, reading the emergency broadcast. Transport ship carrying Veltari refugees. They're trapped in a storm system too dangerous for conventional rescue. Hana felt her heart sink. More of her people lost, more families destroyed, just like before. Then she looked at the artificial wings still strapped to her back, and a wild idea began to form. Could these wings handle mountain weather conditions? She asked. Taiho's eyes widened as he understood what she was thinking. In theory, yes. They're designed for much worse conditions than natural wings could handle. But Hana, you've never flown in real weather. The storm could be incredibly dangerous. Dangerous? Hana repeated. But not impossible? Not impossible, he confirmed. For the first time since losing her flight, Hana felt the old fire burning in her chest. Not the pure joy of Veltari flying, but something fiercer and more determined. The human refusal to accept that people should stay lost just because saving them was difficult. Then we're going to try, she said. The storm over the Northwind Mountains was the worst weather Terra Nova had seen in decades. Lightning split the sky while winds strong enough to tear apart aircraft howled between the peaks. The crashed transport ship was somewhere in that chaos, carrying 47 Veltari refugees who would not survive much longer in the freezing temperatures. The rescue ships can't get through, Director Chen explained to the emergency team gathered in the command center. The electromagnetic interference is disrupting all their navigation systems. Ground teams would take 12 hours to reach the crash site through that terrain. The refugees don't have 12 hours, Dr. Kim Jisoo said grimly. Not in these conditions. Hana stood at the window watching the storm rage across the mountains. The artificial wings felt heavier on her shoulders than usual, but not from their physical weight. She was thinking about the children who might be aboard that ship, scared and cold and waiting for help that conventional rescue couldn't provide. There might be another way, she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Director Chen's expression was confused. What do you mean, Hana? The artificial wings can handle conditions that would destroy natural flight systems, Taiho said, understanding. Immediately. They're designed for extreme weather, and Hana has been training in controlled environments. She could potentially... Absolutely not, Dr. Kim interrupted. Hana, you've never flown in real weather conditions. This storm would challenge even experienced pilots with full aircraft. You could be killed. People are already dying, Hana replied. And I'm the only flyer who might be able to reach them. Might being the key word, Director Chen said. Hana, I admire your courage. But this is incredibly dangerous. If something goes wrong, we lose both you and any chance of rescuing the survivors. Hana looked at Taiho, who was studying weather readouts on his tablet. His face was pale, but his eyes held the familiar spark of human determination to attempt the impossible. The storm is actually ideal for the wing design, he said slowly. The artificial system uses electromagnetic fields for fine control. The lightning activity would supercharge the response systems, and the irregular wind patterns would favor adaptive mechanical wings over natural ones. You're both insane, Dr. Kim said flatly. Maybe, Hana admitted. But insane is better than watching people die when we might be able to help them. The preparation took 2 hours. Taiho modified the artificial wings with additional weather sensors and emergency systems. He installed backup power cells and reinforced the neural interface to handle the electromagnetic chaos of the storm. Most importantly, he programmed the wings with detailed topographical maps of the mountain region. The wings will help guide you to the crash site, he explained while making final adjustments. But once you're in the storm, you'll be flying conditions no one has ever tested before. The system will respond to your intentions, but the execution will be entirely up to you. Hana tested the enhanced wings in the flight chamber one last time. They felt different now, more powerful and responsive. The additional sensors made them almost seem alive, constantly adjusting to tiny changes in air pressure and temperature. "Remember," Taiho said as she prepared for launch, "you're not flying like a Veltari. You're flying like something new. Use your fear, use your determination, use whatever emotions come up. The wings will respond to all of it. And if I crash, in the mountains? Then you'll have died trying to save people instead of staying safe and watching them die. That's a very human choice." Hana launched into the storm just as the sun was setting. The moment she cleared the facility's protective dome, the full fury of the weather hit her. Wind that would have shattered natural wings simply provided more power for the artificial flight system. Lightning that would have blinded and disoriented her instead supercharged the wing sensors, giving her unprecedented control. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. The storm wanted to throw her into the mountains, but she used that destructive force as energy for rapid climbs and sudden direction changes. When downdrafts tried to slam her toward the ground, she rode them like slides, converting the dangerous descent into speed for the next ascent. She was flying better than she ever had, even as a child with perfect natural wings. "Hana, can you hear me?" Taiho's voice came through her communication system, crackling with static from the storm. "I hear you." "This is incredible, Taiho. The wings are using the storm as a power source. How do you feel?" "Scared, excited, determined, and completely alive," she replied, dodging a lightning strike that left her hair standing on end. "I think I understand now what humans mean about refusing to accept limitations." The crash site was a scar of twisted metal on a narrow mountain ledge. The transport ship had broken apart on impact, but Hana could see survivors huddled in the partially intact passenger compartment. They had built a small fire from debris, and its light was the only thing making them visible in the storm. Landing on the narrow ledge required precision that would have been impossible with natural wings. The artificial system let her hover in place despite the chaotic winds, then touched down with mechanical perfection. "Help has come," she called to the survivors in their own language as she approached the wreckage. 17 Veltari emerged from the shelter, including 5 children. They stared at Hana's artificial wings with a mixture of hope and confusion. "You can fly in this storm?" asked an elderly Veltari named Do-hyun. "Not the way our people usually fly," Hana admitted, "but there are other ways to reach the sky." The rescue operation required multiple trips. Hana could only carry 2 passengers at a time, and each flight through the storm was a battle against wind and lightning. But the artificial wings never failed her. They responded to every challenge with mechanical reliability, backed by human engineering principles. On the final trip, carrying the last 2 children to safety, Hana realized something had changed inside her. The sky no longer felt lost to her. It felt like home again, but a different kind of home. Not the effortless paradise of her childhood, but something she had earned through determination and courage. When she landed at the facility with the last survivors, the entire emergency team was waiting. The rescued Veltari were crying with relief and gratitude. The human staff looked at her with something approaching awe. "How many people did you save?" Director Chen asked. 17, Hana replied, exhaustion finally hitting her as the adrenaline faded. "And how do you feel?" Hana looked up at the storm still raging overhead, then at Taiho, who was grinning despite his obvious exhaustion from monitoring her flight. "I feel like someone who found a new way to touch the stars," she said. That night, as news of the rescue spread across Terra Nova and beyond, Hana sat in Taiho's workshop, surrounded by his chaotic collection of flying machines. For the first time in years, she was planning for the future instead of mourning the past. "What's next?" Taiho asked, already sketching improvements for the wing system. "Next, we teach other grounded flyers that broken doesn't mean finished," Hana said. "We show them that there are always new ways to reach the sky if you're willing to build them yourself." Outside, the storm was finally clearing, revealing stars that seemed brighter than they ever had before. 2 years after the mountain rescue that made her famous across 3 star systems, Hana stood in what had once been Taiho's chaotic workshop. The space had grown into a proper research facility called the New Flight Institute, funded by the Terran Federation and supported by dozens of alien governments. The organized chaos was still there, but on a much larger scale. Teams of engineers from 15 different species worked together on adaptive flight systems. The ceiling was filled with prototypes designed for beings who had lost limbs, species whose homeworlds had different atmospheric conditions, and races who had never evolved natural flight but dreamed of touching the stars. The crystalline delegation has arrived, announced Minji, Hana's human assistant. They're very excited about the zero-atmosphere flight systems. Hana nodded and adjusted the latest version of her artificial wings. They were sleeker now, more elegant than Taiho's original design, but they still carried the same fundamental principle. If nature didn't give you what you needed, you built it yourself. How many applications do we have for the new training program? She asked. Over 3,000 this month. We have Veltari, who lost their wings in the war, Zephyrians with damaged gas bladders, even some humans who want to try biological flight enhancement. The training center had become a pilgrimage site for what the media called the grounded. Beings from across the galaxy who had lost their natural abilities, or never had them, came to learn that flight was not limited to what evolution provided. Hana's methods were revolutionary. Instead of trying to recreate each species' natural flight patterns, she taught universal principles based on human engineering philosophy. Students learned to fly while experiencing fear, anger, joy, and every other emotion. They learned that perfect control was less important than persistent effort. Instructor Hana, called Nari, the young Veltari girl who had arrived as a refugee years earlier. She was now 16 and one of the Institute's most skilled student pilots, despite having wings damaged beyond natural recovery. The new class is ready for their first flight test. Through the observation window, Hana could see 12 students strapping on various types of artificial flight systems. There were 3 Veltari like herself, 2 Zephyrians with mechanical gas bladders, a pair of crystalline beings with electromagnetic lift devices, 4 humans with bird-like wing attachments, and 1 brave Rokari whose rocky homeworld had no atmosphere at all. Each species required different approaches, but the core principle remained the same. Determination mattered more than natural ability. Remember, Hana announced over the intercom system, today is not about flying perfectly. Today is about flying anyway. She watched as the students launched themselves into the air with varying degrees of success. The humans immediately crashed, as expected, but bounced up laughing and ready to try again. The Veltari were more cautious, fighting their cultural training that demanded emotional perfection before flight. The Zephyrians moved with surprising grace despite their mechanical gas bladders. What moved Hana most was seeing them help each other. When the Rokari's electromagnetic system malfunctioned, the humans immediately began troubleshooting the problem. When one of the Veltari became too emotional to maintain control, a Zephyrian talked her through breathing exercises that worked across species lines. They're learning more than just flight, observed Taiho, who now served as the Institute's chief technical officer. They're learning that limitations are just problems waiting for solutions, and that no one has to face those problems alone, Hana added. The afternoon brought a special visitor. Admiral Sarah Chen, the human fleet commander who had evacuated the Veltari from Ethros Prime 7 years earlier, toured the facility with obvious amazement. When we rescued your people, she told Hana, we never imagined one of the refugees would become the leading expert on cross-species flight adaptation. Your work here is changing how the entire galaxy thinks about disability and limitation. Taiho taught me that humans don't accept that something is impossible just because it's difficult, Hana replied. I'm just sharing that lesson with others. Who need to hear it? Speaking of impossible things, Admiral Chen smiled. How would you feel about a truly challenging project? She led them to a secure briefing room where holographic displays showed deep space reconnaissance data. The images depicted a vast nebula filled with gravitational anomalies and energy streams that looked almost like cosmic wind currents. The Federation is planning our first deep space exploration mission beyond the galactic rim, Admiral Chen explained. We need flight systems that can navigate in zero atmosphere using stellar winds and gravitational fields. Essentially, we need to learn how to fly between the stars themselves. Hana studied the data with growing excitement. The energy patterns in the nebula did look like wind currents, but on a scale that dwarfed anything she had worked with before. Flying through that environment would require completely new approaches to propulsion and navigation. You want us to design flight systems for interstellar space, she said. I want you to lead the team that makes humanity's dream of flying to other galaxies a reality, along with any other species brave enough to join us. That evening, Hana stood on the observation deck of the Institute, looking up at the stars she had once thought were forever beyond her reach. The artificial wings on her back hummed softly in the night breeze, responding to air currents her natural wings would never have been sensitive enough to detect. Taeho joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea and wearing the satisfied expression of someone whose impossible dream had become reality. So, he said, settling into a chair beside her, ready to teach the galaxy how to fly between stars? Are you asking if I'm afraid of the challenges? Hana smiled. Terrified. But you taught me that being afraid is just having good survival instincts. And what do good survival instincts tell you about flying in deep space? Hana spread her artificial wings slightly, feeling them respond to the complex air currents flowing around the Institute. Below them, the lights of New Flight City spread out like earthbound stars, filled with beings from dozens of species who had learned that broken didn't mean finished. They tell me it's going to be the most dangerous thing anyone has ever attempted, she said. And that we're going to try it anyway, because that's what people do when they refuse to accept limitations. That's very human of you. I learned from the best teacher. 6 months later, the deep space exploration ship Endless Sky launched from Terra Nova's orbital shipyard. Its crew included representatives from 23 different species, united not by their natural abilities but by their shared determination to reach beyond what anyone thought possible. In the ship's flight bay, Hana made final adjustments to the prototype stellar wings, flight systems designed to catch solar winds and ride gravitational currents between the stars. They were beautiful and terrible and completely untested, like every human dream that had ever refused to stay grounded. Mission Control, this is Endless Sky, she broadcast to the planet below. Beginning our journey to places no one has ever flown before. Copy that, Endless Sky. Good luck out there. As the ship engaged its hyperdrive and leaped toward the distant nebula, Hana felt the familiar mixture of terror and exhilaration that had become her constant companion since meeting a human boy who crashed into her life and taught her that the sky was never really lost. In her personal log that night, she wrote, "Today we learned that when humans refuse to accept that something is impossible, they don't just change their own limitations. They change what limitation means for everyone." The stars ahead seemed to shimmer with possibility, as if the universe itself was eager to discover what beings could accomplish when they stopped accepting that some dreams were too big to build. Behind them, Terra Nova grew smaller until it was just another point of light in the vast darkness. But ahead lay infinity, and a species that had never learned the word impossible was teaching the galaxy how to reach it. The sky, it turned out, had never been the limit at all. It had only been the beginning.